Greetings ladies and gentlemen, Adrian here. Welcome back to the channel and to the second post-stream vlog for Bless Online, my leveling review stream. And it's all about dungeons, the second stream. Well, it's the third now if you count yesterday's 1.2. But stream number 2 is about group content, it's about dungeons. I really wanted to see what the level 13 dungeons was going to be like for my paladin class and then my mage class, because yes, I have the two classes that are in the same level right now. So that was what yesterday's stream was all about, and that's what I'm going to be talking about in this vlog recap, which is pretty odd too, having two back-to-back vlogs a day after each other. This doesn't usually happen because I usually stream once a week for an MMO that I'm leveling, but because Bless Online is heading out of advanced access and it's going to be launching and it's going to be available for purchase to everyone who missed out on the founders packs, I thought, you know what, I just put this out there so that new players coming in, this is what your dungeon experience is going to be like. So I'm going to be sharing my experiences with that. So once your character hits level 13 on the Union side, you will unlock 2 dungeons, and I believe it should be the same for the Hieron side, the other faction. And the dungeons are called Guiscardo's Hideout and Underground Prison of Belmont. So on yesterday's stream, I jumped into the first one, Guiscardo's Hideout, and the way you unlock it is to follow the main story. It's going to lead you all the way up to like an area right below the dungeon stuff. And if you open your map, you will see the first dungeon. It is in red, and it does look like a cave entrance and everything. Important to note that there is a gear score requirement. It's going to be a gear score check, and I believe it's like 1650 or something for you to be able to go in there. Now, if you're a new player, you're trying to make your way just naturally following the main quest story, the main story quest chain. You're not gonna get like quest drops or anything that's gonna give you that gear score. So one way to do it is to go back to a town where they have a equipment merchant or vendor or whatever they're called, and look for the most up-to-date gear for your class. I believe it's level 12 and above for all the classes, and it's pretty cheap too, about 10 silver per piece. So by the time you hit level 12 or 13, you should have about 1 or 2 gold. So getting a full gear that's going to help you meet that dungeon check is going to be pretty easy. The thing I really wanted to know was, with the dungeons, especially the first few dungeons in the game, the level 13 dungeons, what were they going to do with it with regard to, you know, group content? How are they going to introduce players to the dungeons in the world of Bless? Because I've been following Bless and I've read their dev diary about dungeons and everything, so apparently there's going to be a story that's tied to the main quest within this dungeon. There's going to be solo dungeons, you know, and then of course there's those raids later on at later levels. So I was really curious to see how the group dynamic would work, especially now that I know that how combat system works with the whole combos and chains and everything. So naturally I was kind of excited because that is going to be my first like group content. Little did I know that these are in fact solo dungeons, and I did not know that going in, even though I had heard that Bless Online was going to have solo dungeons. The problem was, you know, when you look at the map and when you open the dungeon group finder or whatever, it doesn't tell you, it's just bland. It just tells you the name of the dungeon, it tells you what level you can jump in, it doesn't tell you how many people, you know, for a group is required, and it doesn't say solo or group. Apparently in other versions, like the Russian version, somebody was telling me that the first 2 dungeons was actually made for groups. But then here on the global release, it is soloable. So again, I did not know that going in. So I took my paladin in first because I thought, you know, being in queue, I wanted to test out healing. That's what I rolled the paladin for. And unfortunately, I was in queue for like 10-15 minutes. Didn't get a group, unfortunately, so I made my way through that dungeon solo. Now, for a preface, I've also heard and have been told that people have been successfully soloing the dungeons, and this is before I found out that you could solo these dungeons. And I tried to make my way through with the paladin, and my god, it's painful. Paladin's DPS, it's like, you know, you're hitting mobs with like a wet paper towel, and your self heal isn't sufficient. Maybe that's because I haven't really been spending all my gems or whatever they're called to increase your stats on your skill panel and kind of morph your skills. You know, those 2 bubbles, you either get more damage or reduce the mana cost. I didn't really do too much of that. I wanted to go in fresh, a pristine experience, and just fail it. I wanted to get in there and get my ass kicked and learn that way because I wanted to show off the authentic new player experience. Unfortunately, like I said, no group, no popped, so I did everything solo. It took me a while and it was very difficult as a paladin because, like I said, my DPS sucked but I eventually got it done. The bosses weren't that hard. You're primarily tank and spank, and I had issues with alts, not alts, sorry. I had issues with just ads in general. I didn't have any AoE as a paladin at level 13, and I had to do single target stuff, and that was pretty rough, I gotta admit. But I did get it done. And when you kill a boss, one good thing about farming these dungeons is that you can just farm the first level 13 dungeons all the way up to like level 22, and that is apparently recommended in a lot of guides as the best way to get experience points, and also blue gear, so rare gear that drops that you can either deconstruct for important crafting materials or sell in the auction house, or if you get the drop for your class, you can use it. Now that last point is pretty important to bring up too, because the loot in those dungeons is just kind of weird. I expected, I should have known better, but I expected to get personalized loot. So that means I kill the boss, and then whatever the loot was going to be, it's going to be tailored for my class. So that means if I kill the boss as a paladin, I expected to get paladin loot. Especially since I was solo in the dungeon, there wasn't anybody with me. And unfortunately, that's not the case, because I did get drops for the other classes. And, once you figure out that you can, like I said, deconstruct them for mats or sell them on the auction house, then yeah, that's fine. And then something weird happened. One of the bosses I killed dropped a blue piece for an assassin class. The assassin class is not in the game. So that kind of was really frustrating, because it just wasted one of my loot table drops. I could have gotten something better that people could use, or I could sell, or I could... Now my only option is to deconstruct it or wait for the assassin class to come out. So I thought that was pretty weird, and it made it seem like the loot wasn't worth it. But that's just my instinct feeling of not being rewarded for going through the entire dungeon solo. But like I said, all those loot will come in handy, I suppose. If you're a new player, you'll probably know what to do with it. Sell it, use it if it's for your class or not. So once I was done with the paladin, I was kind of underwhelmed with what the paladin class could do solo. When you keep hearing these stories about guardians just face rolling everything, berserkers having a lot of joy in the AoE department, and of course my alt as a mage, I already know what she could do on the landscape in terms of one-shotting mobs. So my next step was to log on to my mage and take her through the same dungeon solo, because my paladin could finish it. Let's see how the mage did. And wow, it was just so OP. I went through the mobs like butter, really, just 1, 2, 3 shotting, and the bosses, even though I take more damage as a mage because of the type of armor or cloth armor that I wear, as opposed to the heavier armor that the paladin wears, I do take a lot of damage, but it's so easy to burn through those bosses. So I can see why people prefer going in solo. I've heard people saying that you can still get a group, you can still go in with a friend and do them solo. But the bottom line is, the first 2 dungeons, it looks like a lot of the player base that are playing Blast right now are just doing them and farming them solo. There's a couple of things about that. First thing that comes to mind, like I said it on stream, is like, okay, that's kind of disappointing if you are an MMO enthusiast or an MMO purist, because when it comes to dungeons, the first thing that comes to mind is that it is a community experience, it's a social activity, and you would expect to jump in as a group. And unfortunately, it is a solo thing, which if you are a solo player, then by all means, that's good news for you, because that means you don't have to rely on pugs, which could be a really toxic experience for a lot of people, and you can be self-sufficient, no waiting around. If you only have a certain amount of time in a day to play, you just go in, do your thing, roll a class that is pretty OP, which are like guardians, berserkers, rangers, and mage, anything but the paladin, and you'll be able to get your loot and get your XP, get out, reset the dungeon, and do it all over again. So that's something to consider. The first 2 dungeons, if you're expecting a group scenario, you're not gonna get it, because the dungeon finder as well, the LFG, oh, it's poor. You're stuck in there, no estimated wait time, doesn't, like I said, the information on the LFG, if you can even call it an LFG, it's just crap. It's way better just standing out in the world at the entrance where you see all the other players just congregating there, and just ask people, hey, would you want to group up and do stuff or not, or just ask your guild. But when it comes to group dungeons, they do exist in game, and at level 22 and above, you will start to go and find these dungeons while you're following the main story that's going to be meant for groups. that's when you're going to see the group dynamic in play. So that pretty much means yesterday's stream I wanted to show off group content. I failed in that regard because it was more of a solo dungeon romp. But now you know that you can solo those 2 early level 13 dungeons for experience points. I managed to get to level 14 on my first run on both my paladin and mage. So one run, that was 1 level. As long as you can solo it. If not, try and bring a friend. On the other side of the spectrum, like I said, you could look at that and be really disappointed and let down by that, because I know some players will feel that, you know, there's MMOs that cater to solo players, and there's MMOs that, you know, should be all about the group and social stuff, because that's what MMOs are for. Whichever side of the fence you are, just know that Bless Online, the first 2 dungeons, solo, and then everything that's going to be coming after will be for a bigger group. Another important thing I forgot to note was that, yes, the dungeons I can confirm are tied to the main story, and there's also a couple of side quests that you can pick up right outside the dungeon that will have objectives for you to go and complete in the dungeon. This could be picking up a chest, or, you know, finding someone, an NPC to talk to in the dungeon. So there is going to be a little bit of story in there that's just going to push the overall narrative ahead. So if you guys have been watching my streams, then you know, like, the bandit story, the red masks and all that stuff is like the in thing at the moment, and the dungeon is going to elaborate on that a little further. And, you know, honestly, if you're playing solo, then that's great, because you have the time to just absorb the dialogue and understand what's going on. Or if you're in a group, you know, and the group waits for you, then great. Otherwise, it's just there, 2 side quests that you can do to get additional XP besides the main story that actually takes place within the dungeon itself. While I wasn't able to test out the combat system in a group dynamic setting, I was still able to put my classes, you know, through its paces by playing in a challenging situation, because what you face in dungeons, you face a lot more ads. So you're going to be surrounded by 3-4 different ads, 5 ads even, as opposed to the landscape where, you know, you could just pull one by one and it's just going to be a face roll. Dungeons, not so much. So in that regard, I was able to test out, you know, how combat would work. And honestly, on my second day now, the adrenaline that you get because you're doing this, it's still new, and I am a new player and I'm playing from a new player perspective. Everything is so new that I just jumble up my combos, you know. I hit the wrong thing, and stuff that should be casted stationary, I move. So there's a lot of things that, you know, makes me kind of frantic, and it's something to be aware about. So read your class skills, read your combos, and watch out for those boss attacks. They do have those conal on the ground red stuff, those telegraphs I would call it, and you can see that. So you just have to get out of the way, because Bless doesn't have a dodge, double tap to dodge or roll, you know, to get out of the way, which I think it needs that, honestly. But even without it, in the dungeons, you can just move backwards, and, you know, it will not hit you if you can see it coming. And for the first few dungeons, the boss attacks are really slow, so you can get out of the way without, you know, standing in the fire or standing in the shit. And really, that is it for my dungeon experience. But, you know, that also brings up a good point. There are lots of these classes now. I think most of the classes can solo pretty easily, and for the Paladin, for some reason, you know, it just lags behind all the other classes when it comes to DPS, and it is the single designated healing class at the moment. So I wonder if that's why the Paladins are kind of gimped. You know, we don't really have a lot of stuff going for the Paladin. Until I get to level 22 and do proper group content, then I could do some healing. Like I said, the two, you already know they're solo, so there's no point going in there trying to heal. Which brings in another interesting point. Class balance. Bless Online, they put out a statement or a note on their Steam page talking about, you know, just stats in general. The DPS appears to be too high for some classes, while the healing is too low for others. And they're gonna, you know, look at when and how they can patch that in. It's not tonight. It was not tonight's patch. So it'll be interesting to see how they do that, because at this point of time, I think everybody saw on stream when I played the Paladin first and then the Mage right after, there's a huge power gap in terms of what one class can accomplish, which it shouldn't be able to. Naturally, you know, take away Bless for a while. When you think of the Mage, you know, light armor, it shouldn't be able to solo dungeon that easily, or easier as compared to a heavier tanky type class that can heal like the Pally. It's the exact opposite here in Bless, which tells me something is wrong, something's not right. But, you know, honestly, at this point, nobody cares. Everybody's probably going to roll an OP class at the moment and just play that until it gets nerfed or something. So that already has, I think, you know, repercussions with the community. A lot of people are going to be expecting players to run, you know, the most powered class or whatever. So we'll see how that goes. Like I said, I've got a long time more before the review comes out. So I will keep you guys updated on class balance and see what Neo has in store. And that's it really for this vlog. Just a quick recap about my dungeon experience. If you guys want to check out that stream, it is in the playlist, which I have linked in the description box below. Now, before I go, there's two things I want to talk about. First of all, everybody on the stream, even though, you know, the servers went down for maintenance, you guys stayed on the stream and you guys asked me a ton of questions, and I had one of the best dialogues ever with you folks in chat. It was such a meaningful conversation. 1 hour of just talking to you guys. That was awesome. So everybody that jumped into the stream last night, thank you very much. That was awesome. And the last thing I want to talk about is something more lighthearted. Look, I very well knew what I was signing up for when I decided to jump into Bless Online for my new player review. This is an MMO that's definitely going to split opinion, because on one side you've got players who have never played Bless before that are highly anticipating the game, you know, releasing globally because of all the hype, you know, that the media has put out, and that content creators like myself and others have made content about Bless, anticipating the launch. We're all speculating about what it could be and everything. So there's a huge hype and curiosity to check out what Bless is. And on the other side, you've got other players from the other versions of Bless, Korea, Japan, Russia, and all waiting to see, okay, what's this global release, you know, how is it going to be different from our version? And these players have a lot of knowledge and depth about what's wrong in their versions, and they're wondering if it's going to be fixed or is it going to be worse. So you've got two sides of the coin there. And right after my day one streams and day one vlogs, wow, the amount of hate this game got was pretty incredible to see. And a lot of it is justified. A lot of it is justified, especially for players who paid the money, bought all these founders packs trying to get into the game, and they're roadblocked by login issues, server issues, everything that I talked about in my first impressions. All those things are legit issues that are definitely making people unhappy with their purchase, and they have asked for a refund. And naturally, people will say, stay away from the game, this is my experiences, you know. And if you want to go that extra mile, then you would say or wish for the game to fail. Fair enough, that is your opinion. And then there are other people that are telling me, you're too nice in the game, Adrian. You're being a white knight for Bless. Why is that? Now look, those of you that have known me or followed my content since I started YouTube, my modus operandi, my method of reviewing a game is not to shit on it after 2 days. That's not how I roll. What I do here is I play the game for a full month, the full 30 days. If it's a subscription game, I will see it through, I will get to level cap, I will do every type of content the game has to offer before coming up with my new player review. Reviewing a game after 2 days, what, you get to level 30? You get to level 19? What have people seen so far? Have you seen the developers change anything in that time and in that time span? You don't know. That's not enough time to review an MMO. That's why all the other MMORPGs on my channel has taken more than 1 month for me to do all those leveling streams, all those vlogs, and then the final review. That's how I work. And people just want me to say the negative stuff about the game because, you know, that confirms their bias or their experience about the game. I understand that there are lots of crappy shit about Bless Online, and I have already mentioned that in my first impressions. And if I don't bring up something that you've experienced, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. I respect that it happened, and I've pointed it out many times in my stream and on my vlog that I did yesterday. But like I said, the way I operate here on my channel is every MMORPG has a fair shot to impress. If the launch sucked, if the first week sucked, it has 3 more weeks to catch my attention, to show me what else it has to offer, and then time's up, the review's gonna come out, and that's it. So don't expect me to make rage videos or uber frantic rants about a certain game, any MMO in fact, because you will not see that on my channel at all, especially not 2 days after release. I'll say it again, That's not what I do here, and if you're new, go watch my other stuff and you will understand how I do things here. But that doesn't mean I will not shy away from critiquing a game if it deserves it. And let me make this clear. Bless definitely deserves all the stuff that's being said about it right now. But I still have 28, 27 more days to go. My review will come out at the end of that period. End of story. So that's it for this vlog, and I just wanted to let you guys know that now that Bless Online is out of the advanced access stage, I will be reverting my leveling review stream schedule to my normal routine, which means every Sunday night at 9 p.m. GMT plus 8 is when I'm going to go live for the next couple of 3-4 weeks until I'm done with the game. I've hit level cap, I've done PvP, I've done everything, and then the review will come out. So I'm no longer going to be doing back-to-back streams, and all the other content, discussion videos, and all that good stuff will come back in between. So hit the like button for more MMO content, and if you're new here, feel free to subscribe to my channel for more MMO reviews, discussion, live streams, and all that good stuff. Once again, I'm Adrian, and I thank you for watching. Hey, welcome to the end screen. If you've made it this far, it means you've watched the entire video, and I thank you very much for that. If you want to watch more videos, you can click the cards at the bottom here, anyone would do. And you can subscribe to my channel by hitting the big round button here to get notifications on all my latest videos. See you guys in the next video.